Hi. Hi, Josie. Do you mind in a? I'm sorry, my brain's just not working right now. Do you mind into what's the word? I just got over COVID, so my brain really stops working. Introducing yourself. That's the word.
All right. So good evening, Anthony. My name is Josephine Alsman. I am a resident of Teaneck in Bergen County. Um, I came out as transgender in 2016 and transitioned at that point. I used to live in Linden. Now I live in Teaneck, I moved to Teaneck in 2017. I'm part of the Orthodox community here, so I have a somewhat interesting perspective in that I straddle these two very, very different worlds. Outside of my, LGBT advocacy, which I still work on, I'm active in ESHL, which is an Orthodox LGBT education and advocacy organization. Um, I have a gay son. He's married, lives in New York. He works for Keshet, which is a Jewish non-denominational LGBT advocacy and education nonprofit. So I'm aware of that particular niche of the LGBT world. Um, Professionally, I am a vice president of engineering at Goldman Sachs, and I provide that information for identification only. I'm also an adjunct professor of computer science at Fordham University. I am a part-time rabbinical student at Yeshivat Yashrut in Jerusalem. And that's basically, I'm a mother of four children, um, as I mentioned before. And what else?
So you're pretty have a lot of free time, is what I'm hearing.
Low, it's low. It's every week on Tuesday between 2 and 3:30 a.m.
Yeah. No, I'm saying you have so much so much background and credentials and really prestigious stuff. I'm like, wow, wow, wow.
I, well, yeah, I also, I have I started my career as a physicist and moved on from there.
Wow. Amazing. It's such
Hmm.
amazing stuff. And so what I would like to primarily ask you is a person in the LGBT community, how how do you think not having a LGBT center impacts you? And then also having a center, how do you think that impacts you specifically, and then the community at large?
So I think that having an LGBT center, from what I've seen in other counties neighboring, so I'm familiar with the LGBT center in Rockland County, which is sort of um, someplace I got a start um, with some support systems there. Also, I'm familiar with the one in Monmouth County. There's one in Highland Park. I'm familiar somewhat with that organization as well. I wasn't aware when I moved here of any type of real LGBT support system, sort of that covered the whole county, that wasn't very niche. So I'm tied into niche LGBT support systems, specifically for the Jewish community, but nothing at large. And those Jewish community services don't necessarily help if I find someone who just needs social services. And it's not been uncommon where I've had to contact social services for other LGBT individuals in other places in the country. I have people who are in, Boston, for example, and on the verge of being homeless, and so having to deal um, with local officials there to try to keep this person from ending up being homeless in the middle of COVID, in the middle of winter. Um, that you know Not having a central location that I could call and say, hey, you know who do I talk to help this guy get services, to make sure that he can get some rent help, or he can get some food help. um, Knowing that there are support systems, support groups, places for people to go, but there's no place that you can call to find out about it. There's no social services number there's no 311 for gay people, right?
Yeah.
That you can call up and say, hey, I have this kid and she's trans and she was interested in HRT, or needs to talk, is there a support group for her? Is there a support group for parents? There's a lot of need for parents of LGBT kids who want to be supportive but maybe don't know how, or who want to be supportive and are trying to be supportive, but they need to deal with the kids' schools, or how to deal with the communities, or just to meet other people like them. One of the things that is a truism in my religious community is that you know individuals don't necessarily come out; entire families come out. And often as not, an individual may come out of the closet and the family may go in because they don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to deal with it within their community. And that's a real shame because the parents don't have support. So as both the parent of an LGBT child who my child came out before I did, I was in need of that help too, not because I had a problem with my child, but because I needed to talk to other people. How do you parent a child like this? How do you help him in school? How do you help him in the community? What do you do when you're a victim of homophobia? What do you do when you're physically endangered by people in your community, in your geographic community, I should say.
Uh,
Um, so all of these things, having a resource that you could turn to and say, where, is there something out there? If there's not something out there, is there a central point that I could go to say, oh, well, I'm a parent of I'm a Muslim parent of a child, or I'm a, Hindu or whatever other, you know, I'm a Catholic and I need some help with my local church or something like that, or I have no religion or whatever because I've decided to leave, and I want to, find some help for that. Whatever sort of sub community you're in, you might need help dealing with that, or you just might feel alone, or you just might want a support group, or you might need help finding an LGBT friendly health provider. I have to go to New York City for my primary health provider because I actually don't know anybody here in Bergen County I could go to that I'd necessarily feel safe saying, hey, would you be my hormone pusher? Right? Hey, can you deal with somebody who's got aftermarket modifications? Right? So these types of things, who do I go to? Well, there's some word of mouth. You hear from this person, from that person, that this doctor will talk to you or that doctor will talk to you. But it would be nice if doctors who were interested in this. I have other service providers who have come to me and say, how do I get into the LGBT community? I know people who do electrolysis and laser hair removal and things like that who want to be of service to the transgender community, for people who are interested in that type of service. And there are a number of people, but it's all word of mouth. There's no place for a provider to go and say, hey, I'm LGBT friendly, I'm an ally, and I'm here for you, and I do this type of thing. I'm a hairdresser. I provide, other services, that type of thing.
so I'm hearing that you're very invested in the community as I am, and you're fighting the good fight. So could you could you give me like an accurate picture of what is the need right now? Like how much of a need is it? Is it just once in a while you have someone, or is it something that's quite frequent, or is it,
My particular situation is that I'm often called upon by people who are not necessarily local to Bergen County. Just because I'm publicly out there as a queer woman, um, I'm often reached out to by other parents or people like that, excuse me, all over the country. Individuals who are trying to come out and trying to figure out what they're doing. And so I'm often at a loss for trying to find them resources. And, if I know that they're in a big city, then I can send somebody to, the LGBT center in Manhattan, or there are things you can just look up online, excuse me, that can help you find these things. There's nothing local. I do know of a couple local people who have come to me and asked for help. And it's all word of mouth. It's all, oh, I happen to know this person who knows that thing, and I can make this connection.
yeah.
And while it's very nice, it gives you a really warm feeling of being able to help people, to be this advocate. It also means that there are a lot of people who, if they just don't know the right person, aren't getting the support they need. I personally would really benefit from knowing which healthcare providers in New Jersey, in my town, in the local area, can provide me with healthcare services. So I don't have to worry about going to somebody and explaining to them very sheepishly about my very interesting medical history, and not have to schlep into Manhattan for every little thing. Um, it would be nice if I could find a doctor. There's no shortage of medical professionals in my part of Brigham County,
Yeah,
right? So why can't I find an endocrinologist or a general practitioner here that can help take care of my needs and manage my needs?
exactly. So in a perfect world, let's say we open up an LGBT center. We have connections with a hospital that has an endocrinologist. Um, you know, is not quite sure how to word this. Where there is no gold standard for LGBT people, where other professions they're held accountable. Um, so competent professionals in the field to do this work. How do you think our community, Bergen County, will benefit by having a center here? Do you think it will be a benefit? Will it be just affect people that are LGBT, or is there a bigger
I
benefit?
mean, once again, there aren't just LGBT people, there are LGBT families as well. And there's more, not just it's not just the families of people who come out, like not just the parents and siblings of people who come out, but in Teaneck, there are, let's see, I can think of in Teaneck, in the Orthodox Jewish community in Teaneck, there are two same sex female couples with children, one same sex female, and they're married, one same sex unmarried female couple with children, one single mother of two, one single father of three, I think. And these are just this is within just the people I know, all of whom could benefit from you know, going to a center where, you have, where you have resources for doctors, for social workers, for social services, for people who aren't going to turn to the kids of these parents and look at them funny because they've got Nebuch two mothers or only one father and he's gay, right? They're
Mm,
not going to, so having that type of thing, in terms of being able to vet the individual practitioners and say, how do I know that Dr. X isn't a complete quack? Well, the same way you don't know that the same way you don't know that Dr. X isn't a complete quack for anything else, right? And eventually, if you go to a doctor and it turns out that he's lousy, people are going to stop going to him, even if he's listed in the book, right? Even if you've got a 4-star Yelp review, if your service is lousy, people aren't going to go, or you're not going to have any repeat customers anyway,
yeah,
right? So that type of system can balance out if you're looking for that. But having it is more than just finding medical care. It's also finding social services. That's also just finding a social place, right? Wouldn't it be great? On the one hand, it's wonderful when gay couples can straight pass and there's no friction between them and the straight world in terms of, here are my two mommies, well, here's my mommy and my daddy, and the kids just play together, and that's just a wonderful thing, right? But it's also nice to see a little bit of representation. Hey, here's another family with two mommies or another family with two daddies, right? Isn't it great to see that there's somebody like you out there? And there are and unfortunately there are certain problems that are, that only the child of a pair of gay parents is really going to understand,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Yes, I do understand. Well, thank
So
you.
so there, having a place. And by the way, the idea, I mean, Bergen County is a county of almost 1 million individuals covering some very, considerable geographic. Having a center may be, uh, in a sense, more of a logical gathering than a physical place. There might need to be several physical places for people to go. You might need, people who are up in Mawa aren't going to necessarily want to go to East Rutherford, who aren't going to necessarily want to go to Alpine, who aren't going to want to see people in whatever the heck is down on Ridgefield Park, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Right. You can go all over the place, and and there's there's a million people here. There's probably you know 10% of that is 100,000. So somewhere between 50 and 100,000 queer individuals in Bergen County who could benefit from this, plus the straight families of those people. Not, for better or worse, acceptance is coming a little bit more frequently. So you do have this issue of families and allies and things like that, people who do want to work and do this type of thing. So there's no compelling reason you couldn't have, a center in someplace centrally located, but you could have, a physical space where other groups meet, all under the auspices of the center. There's a P flag that meets in Paramus. There's and I happen to know about it because I've referred people to it. Um, there's a part-time, there's a trans sort of social group that meets in Teaneck. There used to be a queer women's group that also met in Teaneck until the building that they met in was condemned. And they still have these weekly meetings that come up, or monthly meetings that come up. So it's all of these things. It would be nice to have a listing of contacts for that, right? Oh, I'm an older woman and I'm coming out of the closet. I'm an old guy, I'm coming out of the closet. I really would like to find out who I can talk to about this. Is there a group is there like just a support group or just a social group that I can go to? Hell, is there a friendly gay bar I can go to? Right? I
Yeah.
mean, I've often wondered, is there like a gay bar in Bergen County that if I wanted to go out with, on a date with somebody, or if I just wanted to go out and get the heck out of my four walls, where would I go?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm actually asking you this legitimately right now. Like,
No,
is there a place in
there
Bergen County?
is Feathers. It's been around for, oh God, for forever. At least I think since the 70s.
Where is
It's
it?
is it River Edge?
Okay,
Yeah,
that's not far
on
from here.
Kinnicmac Road.
Okay, I know
So
exactly where that is. Okay, fine.
yeah,
So
there is.
that's cool. So when the plague's over, I can take my girlfriend there.
Yay. Yay. And we would love to have you over for dinner, me and my husband. So
There you go.
you have options.
We're not married yet, but but we're Jewish, so give us a few weeks.
And you really brought a really interesting perspective of the families, because when I'm talking to people, I'm trying to highlight, because ultimately I want to um, release this publicly, and so we can see that there's a need, and for the powers that be to see that we are residents of Bergen County, and there's a need. And I'm always trying to think of, from their perspective, well, what would be the cost, where so many children who are falling through the cracks because of lack of systems, and you're producing children that who have, addictions, mental health, and so forth, records with criminal records because of lack of support. And that ends up becoming a cost to society, either because now we have to deal with all these said problems, whereas opposed to having a center that theoretically could offer support, could help them. But you just like made my world a little bit bigger, thinking, yeah, and then there's the families that need that support. And it's much more bigger. I'm learning from each person I talk to. I'm learning just a little bit a little bit more.
Right. I mean, I don't have much visibility into sort of some of the things that you mentioned, although they're all very real, right? It's a lot cheaper to keep somebody out of jail than it is to put them in,
Yeah.
right? And it's a lot, and thinking of kids who are coming out younger and younger, trans kids who are coming out under age 10,
Yeah.
right? uh, Kids, of gay and lesbian kids coming out basically as soon as puberty hits, right?
Yeah.
Where do they, where do they go? Where do they, wouldn't it be great for the schools to also have a common resource within the county to be able to say, hey, I've got this gay kid with unsupportive parents, right? How can I get this kid some help? you know, and there may, and unfortunately, there may be legal issues. There may be some, I know
Yeah.
some jurisdictions have these mandatory reporting requirements, like kid comes out as gender variant, must report to parents. Thankfully, we're not rural Ohio. We're one of the bluer neighborhoods in the state.
Yeah.
Um, but nonetheless, kid comes out, has parent, and maybe the school just doesn't, maybe the school counselors themselves aren't, don't really know what to do, or there are, believe it or not, homophobic school counselors,
Yeah.
right? Uh, you know, kid doesn't have a school counselor he can go to, doesn't feel comfortable in school. It would be great to have somebody to go to, like go to the call up this go to the center and say, can you send a social worker to my school, or and kids don't even have the wherewithal to even know that they should ask this, but to simply say, to dial gay 11, and and be able to say, talk to somebody and say, hey, I'm having problems in my school, I'm being bullied and my school's not supportive, and things like, what can I do, how can I get help with this, you know have a number that you can call from wherever, that's confidential. Hey, I'm sexually active, where can I get prep, where can I get prep without my parents knowing, or without, or where can I get.
Or just get, or could you help me navigate sex and not talk about contraceptives? Only worry about contraception. That would be amazing.
Whatever. I look. It's been a long time since I've had. Uh, I've had very different discussions with my children, because as my third son once put it, he goes, "Mom." He was complaining once that at his school, the only kids that he went to an Orthodox day school, and the only kids that he could bear to deal with who were cool at all were the lesbians, of which there were a few at his Orthodox day school. I said,
Mm.
well, why don't you hang out with them? And he says, Mom, I'm not gay. I said, are you sure? You're too young to make that decision.
Mhm.
Maybe you should wait a few years before you decide of coming out as straight. Um, and his he didn't quite see the humor in it that I saw. Um, he had a very short retort of just 2 words. Um,
Very funny.
but kids don't know what to ask, or where to ask, or how to deal with these things. They're often told that, whatever, you don't know, how do you know? And of course, sex is such a taboo topic. It doesn't matter whether you're in a conservative religious community or not. So many parents have difficulty talking openly about sex with their children. So many kids don't really want to talk about sex with their parents.
Yeah.
It cuts both ways, and I'm very familiar with both directions there. Um, so being able to talk with kids about, talk frankly with them about, sex, how does it, how does sex work without sending them to Pornhub.
Yeah. Yeah. One other question: how do you feel about representation in Bergen County within the LGBT community? Because from what I see, often it's people very passing, married, very, you don't see a wide variety of all the acronyms in the under the rainbow. And from your perspective, what do you think? How do you feel about that?
I don't see a lot of queer people, period, and except for the people I know,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I know a bunch of LGBTQIA quilt bag people. Let's just call it quilt bag, and get it out of the way. Um, I don't see a lot of those people, because there is so much straight hetero passing, right?
Hmm.
And also, we're not quite at the post, the sort of the fully accepted phase, but I mean, first of all, in the last year and change, I don't see that many people at all, right? But people aren't necessarily, I go out and I'll wear a Pride T-shirt, and people will see me because I'm physically representing. But I don't see a lot of people doing that. I live in Teaneck, and literally until my flagpole holder broke in a windstorm a few months ago, I had a pride flag out on my front porch that was visible at the New Jersey Transit bus stop. Everybody who waited at the bus stop in front of my house saw my big pride flag, right? But I'm the exception. Most people that I've met aren't interested in making a to-do about their LGBT identity. They're interested in just living. They they would just like to have, I want to, if I want to get married, I want to get married. If I want to have family, I want to have a family. But they want to get into this sort of quiet middle class capitalist, you know, whatever, and they're not so interested. The people I know are not so interested in, it's when it's important for them to stand up and be counted, they are counted. But otherwise, it's a suburban county. There's no center for advocacy or presence or visibility. Um, and because of there's no sort of, when I say center, I mean like no focal point for it. Um, and there isn't a place necessarily where people, I don't feel unsafe being a queer woman, but I also don't feel the need to actually show it off to people everywhere. You know, I wear pride wear everywhere I go, except to my synagogue, not because they don't accept me there, but because I personally, my personal ethics about it is that that's not the facet of my identity I want to present in my religious institution. Everybody there knows I'm gay. My girlfriend comes and sits next to me in my Orthodox synagogue, right? And everybody knows exactly who she is, right? When my son got married, they announced his name and his husband's name from the pulpit. Congratulations, Josie Osman, on the upcoming marriage of her children, blah, 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 right? Um, so my synagogue, which is, it's very unusual, but my Orthodox synagogue is completely cool with it. But I still don't wear my LGBT identity on my sleeve there. And there are a lot of people who simply feel that they don't necessarily need to wear their LGBT identity everywhere they go, right? So representation is, I don't see people because they're just not there. I wear a pride shirt. I'm representing, but I'm still a white upper middle class woman, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not exactly my idea of representation is I'm going to go to Orthodox rabbinical school and become an Orthodox female Orthodox rabbi, dealing mostly with the LGBT community, specifically with LGBT women. That's a very underserved area, but it's also super niche, right?
That's amazing. That's really amazing. I'm so proud and honored to have met you and to hear of your aspirations. And I wish you the best of luck with that, because that's
Right.
really
But
amazing.
but it, but that but you asked a specific question about representation, and that's a long-winded answer of me saying I represent, but I know who I represent, but I don't see it anywhere. And I don't see anything coming out saying the LGBT center of Bergen County. So I don't feel like there's nothing around me that I can point to and say, yeah, there's sort of this is a place where I can be, right? And when something and when stuff goes, if things go south, this is a place I can go, right? And as I age, right, what services may be available to me, where might be granted I'm a part of two different communities, but you know what if I need to find a place, if my girlfriend and I get married, which knock wood is going to happen, um where are there places that are going to take an over 55 couple, when if we decide we want to retire to some place like that,
Yeah.
um are there services that are available to you know gay seniors, right? Are there places that are going to be problematic for us? I can't imagine there are places but are there places that are more accepting than others?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. A lot. You gave me a lot of good stuff here. So is there anything else that you want to say, or use this platform to speak on?
Um, Biden 2020. Oh wait, we had that right. Um, I don't have. I mean, I don't know if you're going to display this or edit this straight up. It's not. I don't know exactly how you're going to use this. I personally am willing to put my money where my mouth is and
Mm.
actually put both money and time, which is money from a purse that can never be refilled, um, into helping establish a center in Bergen County so that the next generation shouldn't have to eat as much poop as I had to eat when I came out, right?
Yeah.
What's the purpose of progress in technology if everybody turns around and says, I went through it, so you have to tough through it too? No, to heck with that idea. That's dumb.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a Calvinist idea to which I do not cotton, right? Um, that is just it's like we should be making things easier.
Yes.
You know, we should have self-driving cars and the cure for the common cold, and we should be living lives of leisure and lives of the mind and discovery, as opposed to struggling away every day the same way our grandparents did. Trying to make buggy whips and being caught in textile factory fires, that kind of thing.
Mm.
We should be doing better,
Yeah.
and we can be doing better. And so that's part of what drives me. I mean, that's part of what's driving me personally into things like going into the clergy and doing that part time. But, you know, we should be able to do better, and I'm willing to help work to make it better.
Yeah. So to make it clear, what I'm trying to do is give voice to as many of the LGBT population and allies, and just give them a platform and just ask them, what are your feelings on an LGBT center, and what are do you have any? What is your experience as being an LGBT person or an ally to someone in Bergen County that doesn't have a resource center? And once I have this, I want to create a web page that will host all these videos and to make it public. And on the other end of the spectrum, I want to go to as many different services and ask them, well, what is your relationship with the LGBT community? How do you support them? What do you offer? And do a deep dive with the agencies, and to create virtually an online resource center in the interim until we get an actual center.
Okay.
You know,
So for example, I personally know the two mothers of trans children of varying ages. One is younger and one is a little bit older. Um, both of whom could the parents could have benefited from a center. The older trans child could definitely have benefit from a place to go. Right now, she's got some issues, and it would be great for that person to be able to talk to others, perhaps more frequently than a monthly support group.
yeah. Well, then that's exactly, my
Um,
perspective is I'm a gay man, and you know, there's no more elders. I'm becoming the elder, but there was no elders for me. Um, a lot of my community isn't there, and so
yeah,
we need to make it for
the
people.
generation above you died.
Yes, exactly. So we're doing this blind, but I'm trying to create something, and a legacy, and I'm trying to undo an evil. In my eyes, it looks like a great evil by not having a center and not having services, and undo all the harm that's happening to people because they're easily, just by having a center, it could I'm sorry, this is just not coming out right. I've lost people working, because needlessly, because they just didn't have access to resources, and that just shouldn't be, and it's so I'm trying to make it visible, people's stories, so that way the politicians, the people that are in power, they can say, okay, there's an actual need. Now let's do something.
There's also an actual constituency for these
Yeah,
people.
exactly, exactly,
It's
and
not
that's
just it's not just a need, because there are lots of needy people, right? There's a if you're selling it to a politician, right? Talking to a politician, there are taxpayers.
yes.
There are actual people out there who are living in the county who could be served better, and it's not one economics. It's not like, oh, it only affects one economic stratum. It doesn't affect one race. It doesn't affect, this is something that cuts this huge statistical swath across everybody. It
Yeah.
come, there are a lot more LGBT young people than old people because old people didn't come out, right? They your elders died. My elders never came out. They either killed themselves or they hid, or there just weren't that many people who could possibly, to come out. And now all of a sudden there's services to help people. And it's, it's still not easy, but any stretch of the imagination, there's still so much, work to do to have like a widespread, a widespread, unquestioning social, um, social acceptance to the point where, I mean, we haven't fixed racism yet either. So let's be
Yeah.
real, right?
Yeah.
We haven't fixed anti-Semitism yet. There's a huge upspike in anti-Asian attacks recently,
Yeah.
right? So, this sort of hatred isn't going to go away. Hatred sells.
Yeah.
Just ask anybody on January 6th. Hatred sells a lot, and it sells at a profit,
Yeah.
right? And so, um, it's if there's no center here, I don't know if it's more a sin of commission or a sin of omission. They simply don't see that there's this express need by people within their county to say, yeah, we could really, this is something we could really use. And in addition, providing services to people sort of proactively can help keep them eventually, you know, yeah, if you don't have to arrest somebody and send them to jail, you're better off. If you got somebody is a sex worker, and instead of being in and out of the ER getting treated for disease all the time, if she can be, or he can be, or they can be, taught how to, do so a little bit more safely, to take prophylaxis, to take,
Yeah.
prudent steps to help protect them. If you have, I mean, needle exchanges, you have, social services for people. You just have a place for people to go that's safe and accepting, and that, you go, I can go to a center and not have to worry that it's an issue.
Yeah. And and to speak to that point, because I'm always thinking how this is going to be received if someone's watching this, and I'm thinking, you know, I think people need to understand. No one grows up says, "Oh, I want to be addicted to crystal meth or crack," or "Oh, I want to be homeless," or "I want to be a sex worker." And a lot of people like they talk, "Oh, it's a fantasy" and all this stuff. No, it's not. It's not a good life. It's horrible. You don't want to die within in your 30s and look as if you're in your 70s at that age. You know, this is not something people aspire to, is what I'm trying to say. And it's not because they're lazy or anything. It's just this is the natural progression. If you don't provide services, if you don't provide support, you're going to have an uptick in these kind of areas. And it's not because they want to. It's just the nature of the beast. And
And because of the societal rejection,
yeah,
LGBT kids and LGBT people in general are at higher risk. That's,
across the board.
I mean, and by the same token, nobody decides that they want to grow up to be gay
Yeah,
or lesbian or trans.
yeah,
They would like to grow up and just be who they are. And if part of who they are is gay, then I want to grow up to be a happy gay person.
yeah,
Yeah, well, you know what I mean. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
yeah,
repeating
yeah,
myself. I'm not stuttering. I mean, I want to just grow up to be a happy, well-adjusted individual, love who I want to love, dress how I want to dress, identify as I am, right? And be who I want to be,
yeah,
and not have to worry about, all this other stuff. We have a while to go before we get to that world.
yeah,
But I do think very strongly that having a place where people can go to at least offer them some of the tools to that level of sort of self sufficiency, um, self acceptance, and just self health,
yeah,
right? And it's not just the LGBT people; it's also their families.
yeah,
Where do parents go when they've got a kid, right? I'm a parent of my LGBT kid, and my kid is, you know, I think my kid's got problems because he's taking drugs. Is there a place that he can go that can speak his language a little bit more clearly than just a generic clinic? I've
Yeah.
got I've got a kid, who's I've got I got a parent, and she's not accepting me. I've got a sister, and I want to support her.
Yeah.
Or
Well,
I've been thrown out of my house.
yeah. Or I have to leave because I can't take it anymore.
Yeah, I have to leave because I'm being bullied and abused, and I need help. Help
Yeah.
me get out. Help me find. I'm being abused by my. I'm I'm a trans person, and I'm being abused by my partner or my family, and I need to get out, and I can't go to a shelter that would accept me presenting the gender I am.
Yeah.
Right, right. Because trans women get the crap beaten out of them.
Yeah.
They want to go to a shelter, and the shelter says, "Oh no, you've got the wrong dangly bits. Can't take you."
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
Ask any trans woman of color
yeah.
who's gone through that.
Yeah. Well, I am hoping to talk to as many of these agencies that you're referring to, and give them a platform. And I know it's not as cut and dry and easy, and to see how we can make it better. What is the work that needs to be done? What are the barriers, and how can we make it better? And then how we can create a resource center to make these things doable. So people can rely on services, and it doesn't matter, sexual orientation, gender identity.
Well, if you're looking for someone to sit on an advisory, like an initial advisory board or something like that, like I said, I'm more than willing to offer my time. I have a very small Rolodex of service providers with whom I've dealt and with whom others have dealt, that I happen to know provide services to the LGBT community without judgment.
Yeah. I mean, this is all you're talking about is amazing. And yes, and yes, and yes. um, and if you so do you feel okay with what we because I'm gonna wrap it up now, but do you feel okay with what we
I just ask that. Can you pause the recording?
yeah, okay. So would you be okay with me sharing this with people in the transgender community? Because I want to make sure
Absolutely.
that because I don't want to I know there's a lot of people that are in stealth mode. I know there's a lot of people that are very traumatized by people's ignorance, and I hope I didn't
Okay.
step on
No,
any toes.
I you didn't. I personally, um, I'm not in stealth,
Yeah.
but I also don't make a big deal about the fact that I'm trans.
Yeah.
So some people, my coming out story involved being forcibly outed before I moved to Teaneck. So people in my old community called people here to warn them that I was coming, because
Oh my god.
heaven forfend that I have a soft landing where I could rebuild myself and establish my own narrative, and you know so I had to take that forced coming out and run with it
Yeah.
and deal with it that way. So, uh, but I also don't, you know, I never deny it to people. So if you want to
Yeah.
share that I'm trans, I'm out as trans. I'm a transgender woman, or a woman of transgender experience is, I think, the new locution people are using.
Yeah.
Um, but it is also not, but it is also not something that I necessarily, you look at my Facebook profile, it doesn't say anything about trans.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wasn't gonna explicitly say you're a trans person. What I intended on doing is this is the type of interview that I'm doing, and use this as an example, if that was okay with you.
That's
Um,
perfectly fine.
and ultimately to publish this video, in a public web page and have it there. But before I do anything like that, I intend to reach out to everyone and say, "This is why I do. If you have any issues, let me know, and I'll cut you out or whatever you feel comfortable with." And at any point, if you feel like, "Hey, you know what? I don't want this. Just give me enough time to get to my computer." You know what I mean? It's
I,
not
I respect. I understand. I work in technology, so I understand it takes it takes a finite amount of time to do things. I'm a
Yeah.
physicist. I know light only goes so fast, right? So, but I understand that it's not a problem. And I once again, I'm I was forced out, so I could not be in stealth when I arrived here.
Okay.
Um, and so because of that, I'm out and I have a big pride flag in front of my house usually. So it's not like there's any real question about who lives in that house.
Yeah.
So it's a big old lesbian, right? Um, so that is that's that.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm just so glad I met you, and so really, you're a fascinating, fascinating person, and there's just I'm just really in awe. I'm so glad I met you. That's what I want to say.
It's a
And
pleasure.
thank
It's
you
a
for your
pleasure for me too. I'm glad that I could, that I could talk to someone who sees a very different world than I do on a regular basis. And quite frankly, my world is, in some sense, can be very siloed and very small. And it's good to make sure it's good to be reminded every now and again that the world is a big place and there's a lot of experience that I just don't have.
yeah. Well, thank you. I'm going to end the recording now,
Okay,
and if we can talk a little bit more if you like.
that's it.